Good day all. So in view of my recent request to have you, the viewer, come forward and discuss things that you want to discuss, choose a topic, in view of that not happening, or at least nothing like to the extent that I feel is appropriate or necessary on a site like this. So I'll keep on speaking about the things that I think about. And one of the things I'm always thinking about is, what is the self? Can we find the self? Is there a self? This notion of self is so fallacious, it's ridiculous in actual fact, because it doesn't matter how and where we look for it, we can never find it. And so what we do is we result at something which is convenient. We just think, well, that's convenient, and so we'll adopt that. And so the whole world has adopted that there is this self, and this self is responsible, and it derives out of the body. And so therefore, if we say or do anything, it's derived from the body, so therefore the body collectively with the mind, the brain and the self are responsible. And so we hold them accountable. But there's been so many tests done by scientists these days, and they clearly state that within the human brain there are two hemispheres, there are two separate brains. They can cut the corpus callosum and discover that there are two independently thinking vessels, brains, minds. And so, if that is the case, which it is, and we know it to be so in any case, because just look at your thoughts. On the one hand you think this, on the other hand you think that. Well, why would one brain be in such a dichotomous, ridiculous scenario? Lots of people, they can't do anything through indecision. And so, when we look at this and we try to address it, it becomes very, very peculiar. So, if we are to assume that there is a self and there is one responsible agent, then how is it that we get all these other variants of personality and thought patterns coming? Oh, well, that's because, you know, we're so expansive and this, that and the other. That isn't the case. It really isn't the case. And so, when I look at this, when I try to assess, well, what is it that I am? Let me look at me. Why do I say this but don't really believe it? Why do I do that and don't really have a serious objective about something? Because there's always some sort of counterforce or counterbalance. I mean, I look at my life now and I go, okay, this is beautiful around here, but then there's another part of me, there's another facet of the meanness which wants to live other lives. And I've done this. Throughout my life, I have gone and lived other lives. I've become other people in other environments, completely detached from the person I was before, just doing and thinking in a different way. And so this is what I endeavour to do at this stage in my life. I've been thinking in a certain way for all this time, and I've been living a certain life. And I'm thinking, well, what other lives could I live? What other facets of my multiple facility of personality could I bring to the forefront for a change? And so I was going to make a video, and it was going to be entitled something like, I don't believe a single word I say. I cannot depend on anything that I say. Why is this? Well, because I've looked at myself and I'm very dichotomous. Now, I'm born under the Libran astrological sign, and Librans are given to trying to obtain balance for the better part of their lives. And so I fluctuate, we fluctuate, Librans. It's a little bit this way and it's a little bit that way, and we're always trying to find the compromise between the two brains, between the two eyes. And so whenever we speak about the self, we shouldn't speak about it in a singular way. We should be saying we. We think this. We are going to do this. Or, we enjoy that. Because that is the reality. And so if that is the reality, then how do we apportion blame? If we stand before a court of law and we are charged with a certain something and the judge says, we find you guilty, who do you find guilty? Us? The both of us? How's that work? Because I can make a plea to you, and we've heard these scenarios so many times. Oh, I was outside of myself. Or I wasn't myself. Or I was acting completely out of character. And something came over me, and this person acted out of passion, the crime of passion, that we can't really hold this person responsible because they were in so much emotional turmoil that they just did this without really being responsible for it. So who's responsible? Somebody was responsible for doing something, but we can't split it, you see. This is the conundrum. Scientists, they can't split it because it all appears to come from one vessel. And so therefore we have to hold the one vessel responsible. I've maintained throughout this latter part of my life that we are multiple spirits. And this has been reiterated and confirmed as a hypothesis on many occasions via certain people's opinions. And it's a real conundrum when we look who it is that we apportion blame to, who is responsible, who can we give the appraisal to. Hang on, Aaron, 1 minute you're all goody-goody and you're all nice, and then on another occasion, you say things that we don't really expect from you. How does that work? I don't know how it works, other than what I've just expressed. Because there are two facets, at least within me, which fight for autonomy on any given day. And so I just look at us, and I have to have a compromise. Well, one of us likes to do this, the other one likes to do that. Okay, so we can do some of the things one of you like, and we can appease one of you. But that doesn't last forever, because the other person then will get some sort of jealousy, or they'll feel slighted. Then they all wanted to come to the forefront, and it's kind of like, move over, buddy, it's my turn now. I want to express myself. You've been expressing yourself, and so this is what happens. And so I look at myself, and I can't believe a single thing I say. I won't stand by a single thing I say. We say. How can I? How could we, really, in view of knowing this knowledge? And so, when we look at that, and we try to apply some rationality to it, and we look at the situation, and we look at people, and some people are scientists, because one part of their brain has autonomy over the other, as far as the vocation is concerned. But you see, you'll get people like doctors, and doctors will be trained in all this stuff regarding the health. And yet, they smoke profusely, they drink far too much, they don't do any exercise. Hang on, what's happening? They are not walking what they talk. They are not living in allegiance with the knowledge that they know to be true. How does that work? Surely, if you've learnt all this knowledge and you've gone through schools and you've got a PhD or doctorate and this, that and the other, then you'd think, well, I know all this knowledge and, I live by it. In one facet, when I have a consultation with my clients, then I will convey something of a certain side of me. And yet I'll go home and I will neglect all of those facets of knowledge and wisdom that I've studied and know to be true for many, many years. And so how do we assess this, and what do we make of it? And then you get people, they say to themselves, oh, I'm going to go do juicing, and I'm going to, stop drinking and smoking, and I'm going to do exercise, and I'm going to eat better, and this, that and the other. And then they'll do it for a certain period, and then what happens? The other part of them, which don't like to do that stuff, which goes, fuck it, I want to smoke, I want to drink, I don't want to do exercise, I don't want to eat all this healthy shit, I don't enjoy that. You may enjoy it, even you say you enjoy it, but you don't really enjoy it, do you? You can't enjoy it that much, otherwise you wouldn't be eating these pork pies and these crisps and things like that now. So you do enjoy it, don't you? So what's going on here? Completely two polar opposites are going on. And yet we struggle on a day-to-day basis throughout our whole lives trying to find a happy medium. And it's for goodness sake, can I find a happy medium? Can I find something that I'm going to commit to? How many of us really can commit to anything for a long period of time? Difficult, isn't it? So this is the conundrum that we deal with, and most of us, they don't think about things like this, and they just run on programs. Whichever is the predominant program at the time, they consider that to be the I. And then if you question them, well, you've been running on this program and you've doing these things for many, many years, and now all of a sudden this week you do something completely different. Oh yeah, well, I was beside myself, I was outside myself, or I wasn't thinking, I don't know what came over me, and all this sort of stuff. Do we know anything? I don't think we know anything really. When we look at it, there is a force, there is an energy, there is something that is prevailing. And I don't think that this thing has any real say about it. There is a propensity in us all for doing certain things, and this propensity derives out of our experience. And we've had so many experiences, and we have not had so many experiences. And so because we've had so many experiences, then we do so many things. We don't do the other things that we've not had experience. But if we had experience with these other things, then we might decide that we prefer to do those much more, and we would stop doing all of these. Would we then become different people? These are the questions that I ask. And because myself, more than most, I have wore different hats in my life. And I've done things like I've worked in gold mines, I've worked as a scuba diver instructor, I've worked in the building, I've done many facets of things whereby I've wore a different hat. And I've embodied that sort of person. I was working in the outback in Australia for a building firm whereby I used to have to drive this ex-army troop carrier 150 kilometres to go to this location, this Aboriginal settlement where we were doing work. And I would live there basically. I would sleep in a caravan, this guy's caravan, and he would go home each night. And so I became this type of bush bloke, wearing the Akubra hat and the khaki gear, and out there in the dust and the heat, living on an Aboriginal settlement, looking at how these people live their lives. And it's like being in a time warp, because they would be living just like bush people, even though they were residing on a settlement which was provided to them via the government. They would build them all these houses, and what these Aborigines would do, they would break the houses to pieces, i.e. anything that's wood, that's combustible. They would break that up, and they would make their little fire sitting in the dust with a little billy can, and they would sit around there almost naked. They wouldn't be sleeping in the houses, and The toilet situation, it was like this. They had flushing toilets, but they would never flush the toilet. And what would happen is they would keep going to the toilet, in this toilet, until it became full, until it overflowed, until then it was actually leaking out of that toilet itself. And people would have to come in with machines to suck it out, pump it out, fumigate it, spray it, disinfect it, and all this sort of thing, because they never tuned in to our reality, that they can use this toilet, they can flush it, and then this mechanism would take it under the ground and then would store it in a separate container, which would come to be collected at a later stage. And so I looked at these people and I thought, that's bizarre. What's going on there? There's a part of their mind or their spirit that just didn't want anything to do with this modern lifestyle that most of us are living these days. Their mind is still residing in the past, in the dream time. And this is why the vast majority of Aborigines, they're alcoholics, because they have been propelled into a world which they cannot live within. And so they need this level of escapement every day. And around this village, this Aboriginal settlement which I was working, they would still be hunting kangaroos, and they would have kangaroo carcasses and horse carcasses hanging from the roofs, drying out in the sun, covered in flies, and they would be cutting pieces of this and cooking it, burning it on the fire and eating. They wouldn't be eating any produce from the Western society. So anyway, I've digressed a little bit there, but just to think about what it is we are. We can never arrive at anything that is definitive. We can only ever live in an illusion of what it is to be. And this is why we create the illusion of being a single person when we're not a single person. There's nothing singular about this thing. We are capable of acting in so many ways. And if any of you have any doubt about that, because you are in a particular, you're living in a particular parameter, it is only because of the rules and regulations imposed upon you, which channel you, manipulate you, coerce you into a certain way. That isn't you. That's just one facet of this thing. If there were no rules and regulations, would you be living like that? You'd be living completely different, would you? And then you'd say to yourself, who was that person that was doing that? Who is this person that's now doing this? We are the result of our experiences. And for the better part, we are the result of the rules and regulations and social norms which are imposed upon us via whatever society we're living in. That is not us. That is just energy, prevailing energies which coerce this into certain avenues. And when you look at it, you go, I'm not a free person. Look at all the things that I have to do. What if I didn't do any of these? What would happen to me? Well, in this society, you'd be outcast, and you'd probably end up in an institution. In America, the people that don't want to be a part of this social norm, then they live on the street. Well, hundreds of thousands of those have been disappearing, haven't they? Where have they been going? What's been happening? Is there something very, very sinister happening? Is there a certain agency in America which is rounding these people up and taking them to a FEMA camp somewhere, or disposing of them in some shape or form? When you have a country which makes a law against feeding the homeless, what is that nation saying? about nonconformity. Yes. So, no freedom, no self, just illusion. Living in an absolute illusion. And so, how do you feel about this? You can look at it and you go, oh, you're weird, you're Aaron. Well, I'm only weird maybe because I'm looking at things from a different perspective. Because it isn't your perspective. You've not thought about this for the better part. And it may scare you. And this is why people, they don't want to think about different things because they get afraid. Because of no idea where it's leading. No idea what they're going to do when they find themselves in a certain situation. Because they're always so considerate to the survival of this thing. And this thing just wants to survive. And it will always take the easiest route of survival. For the better part it will in any case. And so there is a few of my thoughts of the day. And so I guess this is what I'll be doing until I'm moved to do something in another way, or I am compromised, guided into moving in another way. If somebody came to me and said, Aaron, I've been thinking, let's do this or let's do that, I might go, that sounds good. Yeah, fuck it, I'll do that. And then all of a sudden I find myself doing something completely different. Like I have many times in my life. I've just thought, I've looked around and I thought, there's worlds within worlds here. I could be living in another world. And so therefore I just got on a plane and gone to live in another world and find myself doing different things in a whole new arena, in a whole new culture. And then I look at myself and I ask, who am I? Who are you? Question of the day.